This video is not sponsored, camera conspiracy guy. I scratched one of the lenses of my Insta360 camera. What a bummer. I think there's a way you can contact them, pay some money, and send it in. But that takes time, and I think I can fix this myself. One fatal flaw in the design for this camera is that these lenses need to protrude out from the side for the camera to do the one thing you buy it for, which is film with complete 360-degree coverage in all directions. Which means you can basically never set this camera down on a surface that's harder than whatever the coating on this glass is made out of. If this thing is just loose in a bag somewhere, it's gonna find a way to make a little ding on the lens eventually. I try to always keep mine in this little padded pouch, came with it, but in reality, inevitably, I just end up tossing it in my bag when I know I'm gonna wanna have it with me. So at some point, I managed to get a little scuff, pretty much dead center on the lens cover on the back side of this camera. I noticed because I was using it to make a whole bunch of time-lapse videos while I was building this new YouTube studio into my new garage. Subscribe to see that video next week. Anyway, here's what you'll need to buff out a scratch on an Insta360 X3 camera, or any Insta360 camera, or any camera. And it's important to note that doing this will remove the coating from the outside of the lens. Notice how this side is a little different from this side? Like this has like a green reflection, this has like a clear reflection. So whatever coating's on there gets buffed off. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I guess depends on your specific use case for this camera. But I'm sure this company doesn't go through the hassle of putting a coating on this lens for no reason at all. To get started, you will need a rotary tool of some kind. I have this Dremel 3000. These are largely cross-compatible with different bits you can get in these multi-packs. For this project, we're just gonna need this buffing wheel. But these little multi-packs are cheap enough that it's worth it to get for all of the possible future needs you may have, cutting off a little chunk of metal, grinding down a little bit of something. This thing polishes rubber. Anyway, I'll leave links to these things in the description. Then, in addition to the buffing wheel, you'll also need some buffing compound. Looks like a little stick. A pack of this comes with different hardnesses, different grits of buffing compound. So the different colors of the compound represent a more and more fineness of the finish, if you will, like the grit in sandpaper. Whatever kit you get will tell you which color to start with, like the coarsest one, and then which color to move to for a buffed mirrored finish, which is what we're going for. So the coarse stick will help you buff off the damage to the lens, or the coating on the lens more likely, and then the extra fine stick will get you a nice flawless mirrored finish. Interestingly, this whole process is also how you fix ugly clouded headlights on an old car. You might want a bigger buffing wheel than this. In car headlights, it's just a layer of messed up plastic from the sun that you're grinding off, and then you buff the next layer of plastic to a smooth finish. Pretty much what's gonna happen here. I think these lenses are made out of like a polycarbonate, a really hard polycarbonate, but I made that up. I could be totally wrong. Here's the process. You first just spin the wheel against some of the buffing compound to get it on there, saturate the wheel. Then, once the wheel has changed color, you get to buffing. If you have a bright light next to your lens, you can sort of look across the surface of the lens and see when you've managed to buff out your problem area. Depending on how much damage there is, this will take more or less time. You don't wanna use a whole bunch of force because you can actually burn like a dent into the lens and that'll change how it lenses. Once you've got it so that the whole lens looks to be the same color and all the marks are gone, you'll need one of these microfiber cloths so that you can periodically wipe off the waxy mess you've made and check the surface of the lens. And actually, maybe just go ahead and get a kit that has some spray. Here's what I got. I'll put a link to this too. This is actually for cleaning glasses. I started wearing glasses because I'm old now, but it works really well for cleaning lenses. Where'd that camera go? On the side. It works really well for cleaning off lenses on like this too. So once everything's the same surface, like once the whole lens doesn't have any more marks on it, then you can switch to the finest grit in the pack, and for mine it was this blue one. Then just give it another good buffing. Try to use really light but even pressure and evenly do it around the whole lens. I would say wipe it a few times throughout this process and check it, just make sure you want the whole thing to look really like crystal clear, no foggy parts of it. And once it's all super smooth and there's no cloudiness in the lens, you're done. And it worked. The scratch is definitely gone. But again, a warning, whatever special coating was on this lens is also gone. You can very clearly see here in the reflection of this glass that on each side of this camera, it looks completely different. This is white, this is sort of like just really muted, but kind of green. I'm sure this has some sort of anti-glare, anti-reflection coating to improve the image, and that is very much missing now on this back side. The side that I buffed is a lot shinier, for lack of a better word. And I'm sure this will do something to the image, but I mean, it's way better than a gummy little gross spot that was on there before. And actually, since there's no way to undo what I've done, I might just buff out this other side too so that they match. Because since this is a 360 camera, wherever you get to the point where it's like using both lenses down the middle of the picture, there's gonna be a seam. But if I buff out both sides, they'll at least be the same, even if they're slightly worse than they were from the factory. But they might actually not be worse than they were from the factory. There's less things in the way between the real world and the sensor now. But that's okay. I generally just use this camera for time lapses, like when I'm building something but I'm gonna be moving around the room a lot and I don't wanna have to keep changing my camera angle. This, you can just reframe it in post because it's shooting in all directions all the time. I also use this for venue walkthroughs. So I do production for these big trade shows and art shows, and after the show opens, I'll just walk around with this thing to get a record of the whole show. So the next year when we're doing planning and someone asks like, how many lines of truss were up in the ceiling in this specific place, I can go back to that video, walk to that place, and then just pause it and just look around. It's pretty cool for that, actually. It's really useful for that. Anyway, that scratch bothered me a lot more than whatever potential lighting glare I'm gonna have to deal with now. But if you're gonna do this, I just want to make sure you understand that you are not restoring this lens to its former glory. You're basically just taking a layer off of it, which is now clean. So whatever job that coating performed, it's gone now. I have nothing else to say on this matter. I feel like this was successful. Goodbye.